Welcome.
Good day everyone and welcome to a roundtable discussion on the topic the future office workplace. My name is Karin Ståhl and I will guide you through this 2-hour session we have in front of us. Hosted by Saint-Gobain Ecophone, we have occupied the lounge in the office of Ideas located in Malmö, Sweden. Ideas, that is the company that last year won the competition, the most attractive office in Sweden. And I do hope you all can get a glimpse of the lovely and interesting office as we speak. We have here today a unique gathering of recognized experts within the field of office workspace, change management and office design. Welcome to you all, but I won't let you in yet. We will, as I said, spend the coming 2 hours on the topic, the future office workspace, in this roundtable format. The goal of the roundtable today is to reach an agreement on the five most important driving forces that will impact the office of 2020. You, all watching, now have the unlimited access and possibility to interact with the gathered experts. And as you are live looking at us and hearing us now, you all have the contact information with the email address and the hashtag for the tweets you will send to us. Before we will hear the panel of experts, we are proud to present Diane Stegmeier, a leading expert and globally renowned author and speaker. You are our keynote speaker today, so I will gladly give you the word and let you guide us through the topic that you are assigned today, and it's the critical influence approach to effective work environments.
Thank you, Karin, and welcome to everyone that's tuned in this morning. Again, my name is Diane Stegmeier from Stegmeier Consulting Group, and it's a pleasure to kick off this session. My personal goal is to get the thoughts turning here, get a couple of statements out there that may influence positively or negatively how we think about the workplace. So let's start with a statement. I believe that organizations do a very good job of creating flexible work environments. I see it every day of the work week when I'm visiting clients and prospective clients. But I pose a question to the group here. Who's developing the flexible workforce? I'll say that again. Who is working on the people side of flexibility? Because a workplace put into motion can only go so far without the right behaviors. And I think we're in a perfect storm. New ways of working can bring tremendous advantages to organizations in terms of reducing workplace costs, the real estate cost, energy consumption, the commute of people having to drive into the work at specific times of the day. But we also have to keep in mind that there are tremendous advantages to creating a work environment from the people side in terms of providing control over specific places that they would work inside of the office, increasing employee engagement so that would contribute to attraction and retention of the top talent in your organization. So there are tremendous advantages. But I see over the past years that there's a mismatch, that we're missing a huge element of preparing people for the workplace change. I'd like to go back 17 years. I'd like to be 17 years younger. Let's go back 17 years. At that point in time, looking at different workplace environments. If you were in the workplace then, you might have been hearing about collaboration and teamwork and co-location. Brand new terms then, no, and they're certainly not new now. However, people were struggling. There were appropriate workplace solutions put into place that would provide the work settings for collaboration, separate work settings for individual work, concentrated work. Yet when you would walk through these spaces, you could look at the layout or you could walk through the physical location and you'd say, this is a very collaborative work environment. But Individuals are not working in the collaborative areas. People were tucked away in their cubicles. They were just back there introducing the coffee areas for the cappuccino, and those were collecting dust. And the only sounds of human life you would hear, the muffled sounds behind the closed door of private offices of the executives that didn't really come out of the office to interface with the people that reported to them. And I thought, something's a mismatch. Senior leaders at that time would say, gee, we've invested in this new technology, in the new furniture, in whatever went into this new work environment, but we're not getting a return on our investment because people aren't using the space. So I set out to find what was getting in the way. What was causing resistance to workplace change, why people weren't adopting and using the space as it was intended. So over the past 17 years, have studied and worked directly with more than 140 organizations around the world, intentionally wanted to look at as many industries, distinct industries as possible. Ended up doing a little more than 24, so 24 or so. The reason being that when we would talk to an organization and they would talk about their unique challenges, they would say, well, you don't understand because we're the financial industry. You know, we're different. Well, the healthcare institution would say, oh, you wouldn't understand our challenges because we're the healthcare industry. You know, and name an industry, and we would hear that. The common factor is people, right? You know, you've got people working in those organizations. Many of them in the offices are those common career skills that are transferable to different industries. So over this period of time, began to uncover factors that kept getting in the way. These factors have come to be known as the critical influences. And as Karin mentioned in the introduction, we're going to talk about this critical influence philosophy or approach to workplace environments. Quite honestly, to make it very simple, these are factors, tangible and intangible factors that impact our ability to accept and adopt workplace change. They impact the success of the workplace strategy, but in reality, they also can make or break the success of the organizational goals, because if employees are not doing what they're hired to do, then the organization is not going to be as successful as it possibly could. And when I use the word employees, I want to stress that that is every person that is employed by the organization. You're an employee, you may only be responsible for certain tasks, but not other people. You may be an entry-level supervisor, you may be an executive director, you may be the CEO. Anyone that's employed by the organization is going to be impacted by these factors. Now, you'll notice that we've placed the physical and virtual workplace last on this grid. I did that intentionally because we know that if the workplace design is appropriate, that it will guide behavior. It will help people be more productive. However, these 14 other factors seem to be getting in the way over and over and over again. Let me give you an example or two. If we went through all of them, it'd be a 17-week course, so unfortunately we can't do that here today. But let's look at a couple of examples of how these influences can get in the way of the proper use of the workplace environment. Rewards and consequences. Let's just say we're in an open office environment and I'm working at a benching area during the day, in the morning, and in the afternoon I like to do my concentrated work. It's when I think best. So I'm going to walk over into a focus booth. Now that may be called a touchdown area, it might be called a quiet room. We'll call it a focus booth for that reason. So every afternoon I get into this habit of going that space and I feel like I'm really productive. Well, when I come out of that space after 45, 50 minutes because I have other work to do or a team meeting to attend, my boss may say, gee, how was your nap? Other people are working out in the hubbub of the office, and Diane comes out of the focus room and, it's that time every afternoon. What does that comment do to me as an employee? It makes me think that the consequence of me using that space, and that space is put there for me to use, the consequence is I'm ridiculed in front of my peers. The consequence is, gee, my boss may not trust me. That sort of consequences, a little thing that someone may say, can cause me eventually to say, I'm not going to use that room. I'm going to stay in the open area. I'll stay at the benching area. I'll be distracted. There'll be noise there. If my employer hasn't addressed the acoustical issues, I may be distracted. I may have more stress. If my peer interrupts me, it may take me 20 or 23 minutes to get back in that zone of concentration. But I'm going to work in that open area. I'm not going to go in the private area because the consequences of that. Something like that is an example of how different factors can get in the way of using the appropriate workplace solution. Technology is a natural. If you want people to work and move about the office different times of the day to pick a different setting based on their task, yet you don't have a telephone with either a mobile phone or a follow me function, and your phone is tethered to that workstation, then that technology is preventing you from using the workspace to the full capacity. A factor in here that most people scratch their head and say, what does this have to do with using the workplace? Compensation. A little bit different, right? A little more difficult to understand. However, it can be explained in a very brief amount of time. Many of us are paid the same way that our parents or grandparents were paid in the workplace. We're paid as individuals. Okay? Everyone there for themselves. If I do a good job, I'm going to get a better merit increase. However, what are we asking people to do in the workplace? We're asking them to use the open team area to share ideas so people can come out with better outputs for the organization. Well, why am I going to share that idea with somebody else? Because they may get the credit and they're going to get the bigger raise at the end of the year. It's something that organizations should try to keep in mind. Because it is something that will come up. Communication comes up with every single one of our clients, even ones that we think do a good job of communicating, want to be better, because communicating workplace change, as we know, is so essential, and it has to be done early, has to be ongoing to reinforce. I will say that the most perplexing of the 15 critical influences is by far leadership behavior. If I had to point at one area to challenge our participants as we're looking at developing the workplace of the future and wondering what are we capable of doing, how far can we educate leaders on behavior and or managing people they can't see? Because we've seen so many recurring themes as it relates to leaders being asked to either move out of private offices, take on a smaller space, manage people that may be working from home a day or two a week. We see cultures of entitlement. I have to have that private office. Physical space as a currency. I'm a little bit higher up the level in the organization, so I deserve a bigger office than the junior manager. Senior leaders are exempt of the behaviors expected of the rest of the workforce. The thought that this is only about cost cutting. It's not about helping people be more productive. Again, this could be a very long conversation. I want to make sure that we can move here very quickly to our discussion, our roundtable discussion. So I'll summarize and just say, I believe that developing a workplace strategy has to be done in a blended approach or a hybrid approach where you're looking at the workplace and the workforce, because companies do a very, very good job of reducing workplace costs, unfortunately, sometimes a little too much, but without looking at increasing workforce productivity, without that balancing act, what you're doing is setting yourself up for disaster. Because I believe if you're not adopting this balanced approach, that you are allowing the workplace design to bear 100% of the burden of changing the way people work. And for anybody in the workplace world, why would you want to accept that burden? With that, hopefully I planted a few seeds here for our discussion. I'll turn it back to Karin.
Thank you, Diane. Very interesting. Thank you for really putting us on track for this conversation we're going to have. I would like the delegates today to give a short introduction of themselves, and I say short as in brief, and along with that to add your vision of a good working environment in the year of 2020. So I will ask you, Diane, would you like to add something?
I would just like to reiterate the emphasis on the design and the people need to be looked at cohesively and holistically. I've used up a lot of time here already. So.
Okay, thank you, Diane. Round the table.
Yes, hello. My name is Frans Davidsson. I work at Ecophon, responsible for the office market. My background is a civil engineer. I used to work as a construction site manager. But since a couple of years now, I'm working more interdisciplinary and how people behave and react in office environments. First of all, acoustically, and how the environments affect them. And what I see the trends for the future, at least in a Swedish point of view, there are already now trends that make the human resources and the managers to think about, is this environment actually suitable for the activity which we will actually take place in this environment? Perhaps not. So now the movements have already started, and there I believe the 2020 office will be even more emphasis on what do we as an employee would like to have, what type of environment should we have. And then we have all the environmental issues like lighting, acoustics, ergonomics part, but also the right type of environment to be able to collaborate, to communicate, to socialize, to meet, to exchange experience, to learn from each other, but also to be able to concentrate, of course. And the people focus, like Diane said before, I believe that's really important. And also for the manager to inform their employees how they have planned it. Not just, here you have an environment, please go ahead. To inform how they have thought and taken care of all these work environment issues. That's something that will raise in awareness in 2020.
Thank you, Frans.
I'm Helen Steitauer from Munich. I'm working for RBS Group. I'm the head of change and communication management. So I can relate very well to you, Diane, what you just have said. And my vision for 2020 would be that HR would take an active role in our projects. From a German point of view, I can say that this is not the case in probably 99% of our projects. That we have to convince them to take an active role and how it affects the people that we change the workplace. So I really hope in 2020 we have established that a little bit.
You got a couple of years to work on that.
Yeah. Thank you, Helen.
Thank you.
Yeah, good morning everybody. My name is Rainer Machner from Ecophon in Germany. I'm, from my background, engineer for hearing technology and audiology, which is a study of acoustics in a very interdisciplinary way. So, and this is also what I'm working with at the moment, since I'm within Ecophon, like 7 years. So Frans is a colleague of mine, and I think this word interdisciplinary is something which is very important for us. And from my perspective, with my background, economics in general is something we have to investigate more and more, and especially acoustics, because, as you said, Diane, the density of the humans will be bigger in the future. So we will still build offices, but maybe with less walls, so more open. And I think the workforce expect noise is coming with it. And we are working on creating an awareness that this must not be the case. And acoustics is not only physics, it's maybe 30–40% physics, but the rest is psychology and many more. So my vision is to turn this negative thinking into something positive, to make something out of it, to take acoustics and many more as a brick in the building, as a missing brick sometimes. And you know what happened if you miss brick.
Thank you, Rainer.
Oh, good morning. My name is Kristina Bodin Danielsson. I'm an architect with a PhD in office design. I have 2 workplaces. I work at Stress Research Institute at Stockholm University as a researcher, and I also work as a practicing architect specialized on office design at Brunberg Forshed Architects. Yes, my whole interest is, of course, how office environment influences employees and organizations. And I'm currently working on studies on how the office environment influences perception of leadership. And I'm also working on looking at how the office environment influences workplace conflicts at the moment. And my vision for 2020 is that, work environment has in Scandinavia and Sweden always had a really high position. But I think today I see a shift that I think work environment is slowly becoming sexy, and by 2020 it's certainly going to be sexy and really important, something designers are eager to work with and not just something boring that the ergonomics or whoever is going to take care of. And I also think we're going to combine the aesthetics with this work environment thinking. So it's no contradiction. 2020.
Thank you, Kristina.
Yeah, well, my name is Henrik Persson. I'm a futurist from the Copenhagen Institute for Future Studies, and I think I'm a little bit different here. I'm not an architect or an engineer. I'm a political scientist from the beginning, and I have an MBA on top of that.
Interesting.
And the future is not just about buildings or how you design things, or it's a little bit of everything. So the interdisciplinary view, that's the important thing for me. And we are working a lot about the future of work and workplace. And I would say that, of course, in 2020, the workplace should stimulate creativity, productivity for knowledge workers. But when that is said, there are so many trends moving in different directions. So, the future is very uncertain. We are looking a lot on, for example, acceleration. Especially in some industries, development is going very fast, while in others it's not that fast. And then we have polarization in the work market. You have a very strong focus on people with talent, and then on the other hand you have the rest in a way. And that is affecting also the workplace. And what will happen then? You have a great diversity in workplaces. In a global scale, you have more women coming into workplaces, you have more generations, you have more cultures. What will that mean? So there's a lot to say about that, and I hope to discuss it further.
Thank you, Henrik.
Yeah, so I'm last on the row, Karin.
No, I'm the last.
Oh, you're the last. Karin El-Ishmawi from Kinzo in Berlin. My office works on designing workplaces in terms of identity, so to give a workplace an identity that differs from other places that we know. And my vision of the workplace is that this identity is really unique. So it's not, let's say, a patchwork of other places that we know, like home or a sauna or, say, a fun park, but we can learn from these spaces that we know and that already work fine or perfectly fine, like our homes that are almost a sanctum of privacy that everybody takes care of and knows exactly what he wants in and what not, and we feel safe or secure in these places, and that what makes these places a home, or it's the character of it. And if we ask ourselves what's the character of our office, there is no description of this right now. The identity is really unclear, and I think people need a clear identity to find a place in an environment. If you go to, let's say, bumper cars on the Oktoberfest, it's a really clear place where I have all the experiences that are related to this bumper car. There's even the voice of the announcer who says, "Well, get in the next ride," is perfectly matches the experiences of that very specific moment. So I think that the office needs a new and a clear identity, and that's what we're trying to working on.
Thank you, Karin. Last, but perhaps, hopefully not least, sorry. Karin Ståhl. I'm active within the field of change management and tenant representation. I have two hats on my head today. One is as a partner at Go to Work, a consultancy firm, and the other is as a board member of the Swedish organization, or the Swedish part of the global organization for IFMA, International Facility Management Association. And the reason why I'm standing here today is because for the last a bit more than 2 decades been working with offices and developing work environments and ways of working. I have one great vision for the offices and the workplaces of tomorrow, and that there are going to be innovative arenas. And after hearing what Christina said, I had to add they must be innovative and sexy arenas where we all can innovate and help our companies and ourselves into the future. That was the brief presentation, and I'm thrilled to hear the backgrounds and the visions that you all share with us. And I do hope that all you listening and looking at us right now are using the email address and the hashtag. I will take a glance over my shoulder. Yes, there are several tweets already coming in, so we will add them into the discussion and into the talks as we speak. In the beginning I said we have one goal for this roundtable discussion, and it's to reach an agreement on the 5 most important driving forces that will impact the office in the year of 2020. And at our help we have some topics that I'm going to present to you, and I know you know them in advance, so you will not be surprised because we are talking about the future offices. And the first theme is trends now and tomorrow. What trend will affect the office of tomorrow most, the driving forces behind that, and the reason to have an office. Share with me.
I can start there. I believe, looking back historically, the reason of having an office is to do your job at your station. You have a machine where you did your work. And now the technology allows us to do our job wherever. We can be wherever and do our job. But to communicate, to collaborate, to socialize, the meeting point will be more emphasize in the office, I would say, because when you want to work alone, then you will be able to do that in a separate room or in a separate environment, perhaps at home. But the meeting point, that's where the office is today, as I see it. Collaborate, socialize, and communicate.
There's a funny thing that happened in Berlin. Everyone knows hostels, where you spend your night or a couple of days to visit a city. There's also vostels, where you go to work, like it's a hub, or like the co-working spaces that everyone knows, but named as a vostel. It's funny because that indicates the role of the office of tomorrow. It's more like a hub where you meet to exchange in a physical way. And I think it's also to be focused on a project or on work itself. and not, do your work at home, being distracted by, I don't know, walking to the refrigerator and talk to your kids or whatever. It's more about in the world of omnipresent news and mails and communication is about to focus on certain things, and the office will help.
So it's interesting that you mentioned that in terms of being a hub, because one of the trends or increasing occurrences that my firm sees is a use of spaces like that, such as a liquid space or Regis, where workplace becomes a variable cost to the organization instead of a fixed cost, because business is unpredictable. We don't know how many people you may be employing 3 years from now. Looking at the ability to make use of those different hubs that are owned by somebody else, and you pay for workplace on demand. For a corporation, that creates financial advantages. For an individual, finding those space also creates the social side of it, social connection.
I think that the three trends there are cost, and they will remain costs, and sustainability of concepts and buildings, of course. But I think it's also choice. We build today workplaces of choice, so people can decide at what place in the workplace they want to work, or whether they want to work at the home office, or at the airport, or wherever, at other third places. And I think that having the choice to go to work will remain very important in 2020, because work is also social relationships. Work is not only the task that I do, work is also my colleagues and the identity that I have through my work. So going to an office is socializing, is being with colleagues, and completing my identity, that part of my identity. So I think the office will remain very important to us.
You will never make a career out of office. You will.
And at the kitchen table, it's quite hard to get known.
Yeah, exactly.
When you don't smell like onions, right?
I think the social and cultural aspects are really interesting for several reasons. We've worked a lot about that in the institute, and you have the greater diversity at work with different generations, with different views on things, actually different cultures. So how can you adapt that to the needs of the organization in the future? And then also you have we work a lot about societal logics, and there are some new demands coming up. You can see, for example, the younger generations. They don't really accept the hassle of things not working, or time-stealing devices, or I mean that's so if there's resistance, if it's not easy, if it's hard, people will get annoyed and won't accept it, and that's particularly the younger ones. In my generation, it's more about there's been a lot of focus on creativity, innovation, and personal growth, self-actualization, and things like that. And I think for one group that is very important, and also, for example, the talent group. And then we have others that are more focused on the social side, experience, identity, things like that. And the third group that's where security and pay is important, and how can you create a working environment that takes all those different sides into account? That will be a challenge.
So the Maslow's approach to workplace design.
In a way,
get them all.
Yeah.
In a way, but not as a pyramid, but more like
right.
I mean, you have needs.
The different needs being met by the office.
Yeah.
But I think what it comes to is leadership again, what you introduced in the beginning. If you have the three types of people in your workplace, what it takes is find out together with HR what are the regulations around it, so all these three people feel secure and flexible and at the right place. I think that's very important.
And how to take the demographical change into account of this, because you've got the younger people with very different expectations to the workplace and the way of working, the techniques, using Apple devices or standard ones. And what about the older ones? How to integrate the workforce in this process? I think you said you are doing change management, and how do you do it?
Right, it's not doing it to them, it's engaging people in the process, right.
And as we said yesterday at the dinner, is it a trend or is it more is it a change or a development?
Right, again, and development or evolution, I think the things we're mentioning here go well beyond a trend. And I'm hearing this number of different descriptions of the social side. To give credit to a client that said that their vision for their workplace that was being developed is they wanted to create a social heartbeat that would draw in all the different, the diverse members of the workforce. And that was a challenge that was given to the firm that was designing the spaces, that we want people to be drawn in and want to be there. So that social side is, I think, will continue. I don't think that's a trend. I don't think the social side is a trend. I think that's an ongoing development.
You said evolution, and this is quite interesting, because if you do a change in a very specific time, which is not like decades, it's more like years, we'll have the change of office building, and how to think about evolution on the changing economic aspects in that.
Yes,
quite tricky.
Well, and evolution takes a long time, as you
Normally,
know.
yes.
So as you're changing offices, and the next time you do an office, you learn something. You're incorporating something new. It's a time to have even more successful outcomes for every single project. That sort of contributes to an evolutionary effect, rather than saying we have to invent the office of 2020 today and decide today, to understand what are the maybe 5 elements of driving it, but what it looks like can evolve over time.
So you mean, Diane, that the reality is changing as we live in it?
It does. Yeah. Sometimes by choice, with organizations saying, "Hey, we're going to do this. We're going to introduce a new type of product that we invented, or go after a new market," and other times companies are responding to like the economic conditions and saying, we don't want to do this, but we have to take these 3 action steps because of the economy, or because of the inability to fill certain positions because of talent shortages. So whether it's proactive or reactive, I think those changes are changing the people within the organization and the need for the workplace itself to adapt to be appropriate for them.
Yeah, and then as I see it, we being the experts in the field, it's important that we can handle, as Rainer said, what are the development and what are the trends, that we have the glasses on, so we have a clear sight to see what are the trends and what are the evolution where we are living right now, so we can advise our clients on the path that they will take on this journey.
Because I don't think too many clients would approach any of us and say, "Hey, tell me what the trend is. I want to invest a lot of money in the trend." They want to know. Okay, tell me what's going on now. But where's the workplace really going, and where does it need to be going for our organization? Rarely does somebody want to spend a lot of money just to say, "Hey, we're part of the trend."
And to stress out what is a trend and what is the evolution, the development, we can talk about the weather, for example, and the climate. We all talk about the climate changes and the sustainability, and to see the climate as the evolution, the development, and see the weather as the trend, so it can be easier to relate to it. Christina?
Yes, I was thinking about this. We talk about the evolution and how the diversity of the workplace with older people and younger people here. But I think really the office environment has to, in a way, support more sensitive senses. We are so much emphasizing the social aspect, and everyone talks about the workplace as a meeting place and all that. But when we think about collaboration, it's actually based on 2 legs, so to say. It's one is interaction with others, but the other one is also solitude, to withdraw yourself. And it's really important. Of course you can withdraw yourself and say, "Hey, I'm going to have this need to withdraw on Friday when I'm going to work from home." But you also need that at the workplace, and I believe a bit also like your example there, Diane, on a manager that actually doesn't approve of you working somewhere else where they don't have full control of you. I think we have to work really need to emphasize this concentration aspect and solitude, because I mean Einstein, whoever, really the big inventions are not always in teamwork. A lot of ideas come up when you're alone, when you have time to think, and you can't really plan that all the time.
Right.
I mean, of course, it's nice if you know that you're going to need that on Friday, but you might need it actually 30 minutes from now or whatever, and so we have to design office environments that makes that possible, and also really give the silence, really emphasize on silence at places. I think that's a big challenge, and I mean the older workforce the senses are different to the youngers. They are more sensitive to sounds compared to younger, which actually are more creative, which will love to work with. There's a lot of buzz going around.
And colors and lighting and all those effects.
So we have to accept that, and not only think they are naysayers, and if we like them to stay, at least that's what we're fighting in a lot of parts of the Western world. We have to have people staying at work and not retire at 65, because we need them for economic reasons. So we better have some really good carrots there for them to
stay. Important knowledge because of the demographical change. If you kick them out at the same time, I think the business will...
So I'm a bit afraid that everyone is forgetting that the part of collaboration which seems to be less sexy. So everyone's talking about the social side, and we're not talking about this solitude and being by yourself and being accepted for that.
But I think we're now in the position with the mobile technology that we're not hooked up to machines as like 20 years ago, where you had to do your work whether on the typing machine or on the computer screen, and you could not leave that place because then you would have to, you would not work. And now you're enabled to, move your body through the perimeter of the office and find a spot where you can do a certain type of work. And if you think of when the office was invented, or when the term bureau was born, it is just a table with a cloth on top. That was a bureau, and this is what it is now, or what it could be now, because you have your mobile devices and you have your meetings, and you can make this table a round table, even though it's rectangular.
R for R.
Just because of that technology that we're able to use now.
I think it's interesting, Christina, what you said about you don't always plan your activities far ahead. It's hard for me to know on Monday morning that I on Friday afternoon would like to be concentrated to wrap up the work of the week. Also adding what you, Helen, said about being the social and the meeting spots, and Frans letting us know that he can stay home someday and put that report together, or what else you do while concentrating. We have had a tweet that came, a couple of tweets coming in already, and one question to the panel here: is it obvious that all companies will have an office in the future, in the year of 2020?
Yes. Hopefully, yes.
I'm not sure. I mean, it depends. The development in some areas is so fast. So I mean, the future is always uncertain. So you can't say no, it will never happen. I think, and the technology development is so fast. So I think in some areas that might happen, but of course not in all. Not until 2020 for sure.
But I think we will always have offices. They might be used differently. I mean, if we look at Korea and all these large towns, and people don't want to spend 1.5 hours every morning to move into their office. So what companies do is they build offices in the outskirts, so people can go into one office.
Like satellite locations.
Satellite locations or shared office locations. So I think the office will always remain. The question is, will it be headquarters or will it be shared offices maybe with other companies, so people don't have to travel that far and spend their time on the road instead of in the office being productive.
Probably both, right?
And you, Karin, shared the experience with the hostels, and those that you have seen, are there tiny ones or are they organized?
Well, they're different in scale. There are some houses or buildings that are filled up with office space that you can co-work in and you can rent for a day or for a longer period of time. And then you find, whether you're just a single man show, and you find your workplace, and then you have the need for help in one or other areas. So you go and ask within the building who's able to do some graphic design or some programming for me because I have a problem that I can't solve. So it's a network that is sort of gathering in a hub, in a place where things are done with a focus on work, less on a social event or a social interaction. It's about creating things or producing ideas, and therefore we need these places, I think, and they have to be dedicated the same way as a sauna is dedicated for sweating.
But that's the proof. That's the proof that offices will exist, because even freelancers who could work from home and don't have a need to go into one specific office, they like to do it because they like to have other spaces that are designed for work, and they like the collaboration with others to share knowledge, to teamwork on the same project, to focus on work, of course. But for me, that's the proof that the office is still something very human and that we want and that we need, and for social relationships, but also to have the differences in rooms and in atmosphere and in focus.
I think there will be a very diversity in the type of office buildings. So as we said before, it's maybe not the 2020 office, it's more the 24/7 office. So open it up for the weekends. Why not, if you want it, the younger generation work on Sundays and having a free day off on Monday? Why not?
Coming in at 12 o'clock in the morning.
And without seeing it as bad, you described it with the breakout zones. If you come out and the boss is saying, nice nap, you have to change this, and this is in between the ears. It's,
right. But we were chatting, a couple of us last night, talking about offices that are open only during the daytime and only Monday through Friday, and that real estate is wasted. What can you be doing with maybe not all of the spaces, some of the more public spaces, to offer space for communities, family events, having the ability for people to choose. I'd rather work on Saturday afternoon, and to have more control over their time, because that flexibility is going to have people want to give more back to the company, because they know that they can have better work-life balance by having that control over the space, working at home or working at different times. And I think, we've seen that happen, more highly engaged employees, more loyal, if there is such a thing as loyalty anymore in the workplace. But when you look at the retention factor, that's so important for so many of our clients, that they want to make sure that they have the workplaces that will contribute to that. And again, having human resources on board with that, so they can help make sure the policies support the employee desires and the ability to use the workplace and work in different third places.
I see a challenge here actually with these spread out offices, the hubs located closer to the clients at a cheaper rent and all that. It's all practical, but the challenge is for the organization to keep it tied together. I mean, how do you do that it's a challenge anyhow if you're a big company, but really that's one of the purposes of having this office where you meet colleagues and go on trips and do things together.
So that's from a cultural standpoint?
Yeah, for an organizational culture, how you really feel that you belong to this organization, and for what reason. That's a leadership challenge and how to.
Like some of the big corporations now build up campuses because they want to gather all the different branches on one site.
Right, it may be large and spread out, but at least it's together.
It's a campus, and this is easier to install an identity and a culture of corporation on a bigger site than in branches spread out all over the city or all over the
shared
country.
resources by doing that.
Yeah, plus to have that group feeling. Like we're a many of us, and we can do things, and we can move things.
And the loyalty, if you want to
and
get
the
talented.
Yes.
But also one of the driving forces behind all of these, like the hubs or reusing of the facilities, or also more than just the working hours. It's also, of course, the green driving force. The environmental issues of carbon, CO2, and so on, which we see, at least CBD, Central Business District. These trends of green buildings, it's a must to be able to rent it out to big companies, because otherwise you won't be able to get that deal. And,
so is that a driving force then that will shape the Office of 2020? Because
definitely.
The Earth is not going to get any larger. Natural resources are being depleted. I personally think that that's not going to go away. So that's going to help us in the decisions of what that workplace should be.
Now we have this specific amount of resources that we have to plan how to use, and the total energy on the earth, it won't increase and it won't decrease. It is what it is. Talking about sustainability, we can see it from different angles, as you say, Frans, about the environmental aspect on the green buildings and how we travel to and through our workstations, our workplaces. We can talk about economical sustainability, and we can talk about the social sustainability. I think that we should we have talked a bit about the human aspect, and as you said, Helen, we are human beings. We need to go somewhere, and we need to gather. And Christina stressed out the culture of the companies. But this development, this change, because we can all agree on that. Change is going on, isn't it? It's not status quo. It's we are changing, and the world is changing. So these changes that we are into, how will they affect the leadership and then affect the workforce? Are we flexible enough, both as managers of the companies and as experts to contribute to our clients' success? Are we flexible enough to keep up with these forces that's just rolling on and affecting us? What do you think, the human aspects on the changes?
Well, I think when you talk about that, I come to think about the divide between the talents and the rest. And I think that you will see in the future that you have to have different strategies how to manage flexible workers and talents that work more or less full time. And that will affect also the office and how you will organize the facilities and strategies for that.
And I think there's always a tension. If we have those projects, there's always a tension between the well-being and the work-life balance and the flexibility of the workforce, and then the flexibility of the building and the facilities that the company provides, because usually it doesn't match all the way. Because if you want to give the flexibility to your workforce and say work wherever and whenever, then automatically you want to downsize your facilities, because you're saying, okay, if they come 24/7, then we don't need to provide that space for 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. But then the workforce feels like being moved out of the office. They say, okay, do we have to have home office now? Do you want me to force on a certain flexibility? And I think there's always a tension between the trends and also the visions and goals that companies have with their projects that can't really be solved, but then it needs to be a pragmatic approach, and the company really has to decide is what do they want to put on the first priority, and then go through with it, because otherwise we can't have an ideal workplace that fits actually all those trends and needs 100%. This is what I find. It usually comes up then to costs that nobody can pay for, or facilities that don't work for, or don't have a sustainability aspect, or whatever. So
I think the biggest challenge is that managers are not prepared for flexibility. It's just not saying, okay, I'm going to be flexible. It's understanding it's a different way of managing. It's not managing on the amount of time you're in the office. It's not necessarily on the task. It's on the outputs. To understand, for knowledge workers, they're not manufacturing drinking glasses. They're manufacturing information and knowledge and ideas. And how do you get the minds to shift from the task to the deliverables or results of knowledge workers? Even if a manager today graduated 5 or 7 years ago from college, they're not getting the type of education on those new managerial skills. And I think with our change management process for clients, a very, very big part of it is training. Well, training the different levels in the organization, but in particular mid-level managers, they have so much at stake. If you think about someone that has been managing, maybe they've been managing 5-10 years, and their next step in a promotion might be that private office, and all of a sudden we're taking away private offices. So they'll have a way of making sure the workplace strategy doesn't quite work well. It could be some of the comments to the workforce. We call it silent sabotage. That a manager can be the good soldier, the good loyal employee, and say, "Oh, good idea. We want to save money. We want to have a flexible environment. I'm all for it. Whatever, I'll do whatever say. I'm a good company person." But behind the scenes, and sometimes not even consciously, they're looking for ways to make it fail. It's not always on the surface, and trying to detect that up front. We think that the training is a very big and very important part of that, is helping them focus on the outputs, helping them focus on the value they bring to the organization, even though they may not be surrounded by 8, 10, 12 people that report to them every single day. It's a huge shift.
It's funny that you mentioned that actually middle management might be the challenging part. I read about research that they found that when they were shifting from cell offices to open plan, that the division that were against it was actually middle management, not the top management. Neither were the newcomers that had only been for a few years at the firm. The ones that had been there 10 years and were hoping for that office saw it taken away in front of their eyes. So they were the ones, no, we don't want that. And they also thought perhaps there's the hypothesis for the outcome by the researchers were that also perhaps the older, the seniors were more also relaxed. They were like, no, they didn't have a need to withdraw, and like they had nothing to hide, so they didn't mind being working more
confident.
Open. Yeah,
right.
And where also the youngers needed to be close to learn, whereas the middle ones were not really sure about themselves.
Right.
So I think you have to find different carrots for the middle management and so on. And I worked in my research. I met people actually quite high positions, but also middle high, where they put themselves at the worst position in the open plan office, right by the staircase, where they all the time are disturbed by people knocking on at the window, asking, "Oh, where is this and this person?" But then they said, like, "Okay, I'm so very little of my time. I'm actually at the workstation, and when I'm there, I should be disturbed."
See, they realize
and I earn a lot of money, so I don't need the most flashy office or whatever. My office is actually all these different meeting rooms. But I might have been a very open person that said that, and obviously he was not. He felt secure about his position and all that in there. But it's very much what benefits you get from working, not needing the office as a status symbol, but needing it by, if you need a cell office, it should be by your need, the need of your work assignment,
right.
and not your status, which is actually quite natural. But then you have to find how to really promote that and get what benefits is it for losing that office.
Right. Well, and I think you mentioned to get the word out, inform, to communicate. I like to take a look at the organization as a sandwich. If you think about the bottom layer of bread are the individual contributors, the people. They're not responsible for other people. They still may be very responsible, very talented, but they're responsible for their own work or projects. The top layer of the sandwich, the bread up there, are the senior executives that are making the rules, forming the rules. You look at everybody in between there, which is a pretty broad middle level. They're getting pressure from above and below. From above, they're getting pressures like, you need to do this, you're going to do this, you got to make your people do that. They don't have the education they're not informed, they're not trained. They're educated, but they're not trained on managing in new ways. And the people below them, the lower level of the sandwich, are looking up and saying, we realize that we don't make the rules in the organization. We're going to do whatever you tell us to do. Please would you help us connect the dots, what's going on here? So this middle layer of the organization is really under the most pressure. And often they're ignored because it's like, well, they're going to be unhappy, so let's just ignore them, and maybe they'll eventually adapt. And they do. You can avoid change management, and people eventually will adapt to the space. But I don't know any organization is willing to have the risk of that lost productivity. It's like focusing on the people that have the most to lose and need to understand that it is a tremendous shift in how we work.
Yeah, so you don't let the middle management get lost in the mayo.
Yes.
Can I ask you a question? Because what I find out in our project with our clients, that we point out exactly this, what you just said with the middle management, and they say, HR says, but we have very good training programs. Our training is so well, they don't need extra training.
They don't need extra training, right.
Do you experience the same?
That question may come up, and we talk about workplace protocols, and is it acoustical etiquette, or what are the different things, and all of a sudden HR says, what? They have great training programs. Yeah, they are trained to train. They're very capable. However, not on that subject matter. And we found, as change management consultants, we find that we have to be very political within client organizations, and we will say to the HR that always get on board. I mean, in our projects, mostly U.S. or Canada, we'll collaborate with HR and make sure that it's integrated. Very quickly they realize it's like, ooh, this is not our area of specialization. But at least they have a voice when we develop specialized training content about what that particular change requires in terms of change behaviors. We allow, they'll go through the content and tweak it if they want. So it is a joint effort, but it is so critical. Oh gosh, we just see that as being not the magic secret ingredient, but it's sure an essential one.
But do you use the building itself as something to shape the critical mass in this process?
In terms of the training, that they're just
you shape the building, and it's the other way around.
Ah, okay. Well, that's one thing. When we're talking about this blended, this hybrid approach, there may be a workplace strategy that's already in place. The workplace strategy may already be created. It's not implemented yet, but it's created. Or there may be tremendous shifts in the workforce where the workforce strategy is in place. One doesn't have to come first, but it's the point that you need to get them integrated before you implement. So, yeah, the building, in our case, the building is almost always driving the change, the building or the workplace strategy. We feel our job is to make sure the workforce is represented and trained and feeling comfortable about the change. So yeah, the building is shaping what the behaviors will need to be. but hopefully who's ever designing the building is designing the space to meet the behaviors that need to take place. So it is integrated.
I think that's interesting, but just thinking, often buildings, they're designed to last for 20 years, and they don't think about changes under the way. And what's your comment to that?
My comment to that, after seeing so many clients make decisions based on cost only, that, well, we'll put up drywall because it's the least expensive way to divide space, instead of modular movable panels or something like that that costs more, that if you build flexibility into the building up front, which usually costs more, that they're saving money in the long run, because how can anyone possibly predict what their business is going to be 20 years from now? How can you possibly guess? You know, if someone has a crystal ball, that's great. They're probably billionaires, but
well, it depends. Some industries are changing really fast. If you're in the software industry, it's changing from day to day. But if you're making beer, might be the same in 20 years from now.
Right, and it might be. So maybe.
Definitely.
I was going to make a time joke.
Yeah, but what's changing is the employees, the new generations coming in, the older generations staying longer. As Christina said, we need the workforce. So it's maybe not the product that we are delivering that are going through the change, the phases of changing. It's us, the human beings,
and the expectations that we have.
One human aspect is, of course, satisfaction and health and well-being. We have one tweet with a question and statement that I would like to share with you, so we can have your comment on that. What do you think about improving health of employees through healing environments? The tweeter says that I think healthy offices are the future.
Yeah, that I believe. I actually wrote a chronicle about that once. We have green buildings stamped. This is a green building. But where is the stamp for this is a good working environment?
Stamp for the person.
Yeah.
Exactly.
The building might be as green and stamped already, but what about us, the persons? And having that type of certificate that this building and interior design is well working for this type of activity in work environment.
Maybe one example from my experience with the German green building standard or DGNB, you can compensate a missing acoustic with parking spaces for the bicycles.
Yeah.
And imagine what that means for the building and for the health and for the noise.
That's dangerous.
You take the
just getting the 5 points over the home.
Get your points.
Christina?
Well, I actually did my PhD on that topic. I compared the 7 different office types that we find in contemporary office design in Scandinavia. And I found outcome for the study was health, status and well-being, and job satisfaction. Some of these studies in the PhD. And we found significant differences between the 7 different office types. And cell office, individual office turned out to be very good, but also flex office, this activity-based office type where you can choose workstation on a need basis, and you're able to find workstations that suits you within the office, and you also can work outside of office. However, in this study, the people had to work at least 75% of their time at this specific office, so we didn't have any people that worked most of the time at clients. And we found those 2 to be the best for health outcome. And then when it came to environmental satisfaction with the work environment, we found that cell office turned out to have the most happy employees when it came to the proximate area around where you're actually closest to the physical environment. But when it came to the social aspects, like how do you find the work environment supporting interaction and social behavior and so on, then that office type didn't come out very well. But which instead flex office did. But the funny thing, all those other shared open plan office that we have in between there, shared room or a small, medium size or large open plan office and combi office also, which is also an activity-based office type, they didn't turn out at all that well, and the ones that turned out really bad were the traditional open plan offices. And it's so interesting, I think, that you have such a variety on health outcome, on also on job satisfaction. We had that when between the different open type of offices, there are open plan office. So in my opinion, we should stop talking about open plan office. We should talk specifically about which type of open plan office we are designing. And I think we should design for healthy office environment. And based on my studies, I would say, yeah, we should definitely stamp the offices. This office type is less good, and this is good from a health outcome. And then we can stamp medium-sized open plan office as a risk office type from a health point of view. Unfortunately, it's the second most common office type in Sweden after cell office, the individual room, because it's the easiest office type to design. It's like 10 to 24 people sharing workspace. You don't have a lot of backup rooms for meetings. Of course, you have one or two and so on, but you don't have that amount you actually need for the office to support you to be able to withdraw, that I talked about before. So actually I think it's as we talk about green buildings and all that, we should certainly start to really look at which office types are more or less healthy for you. And then of course it comes to the actual design of the office. Now I'm not talking about how aesthetic or nice the office is, but only about how the amount of backup rooms and how you actually use the office. And I agree with the sender of that it's really important, but it's also a bit tricky to talk about buildings as being healthy, because it's the people and the environment and what we do there and their leadership. Behavior and how leadership is carried out and in the building, in the office. But then the office has to support it. And medium-sized open plan office doesn't seem to support that.
If the user or the worker has a place for his private stuff, let's say pictures of the family, little cactus, whatever makes him feel home-like in a way, this also gives them enables people to stay healthier because they feel well, they feel secure, and you don't get sick at home as much as in the office because you don't think about being disturbed in your intimacy or in your privacy. And privacy is something really worth to think about in an office space, especially if you're activity based and you move from space to space. You always need a place to return to, a home base that is yours somehow. And the concepts that are talking about sharing, desk sharing rates and flexible zones are fine, but you still need, as a person that works like 75% in one spot, you need that spot to be yours and to make clear, this is my flag, I pulled it up, I'm home, and don't enter, don't trespass.
No, but these open plans, of course, which you said is a risk environment. And my wife, she spoke to me, and of course I'm a little bit nerdy when it comes to sound in open offices. And she said, "Yeah, I feel it's so stressy to sit in my open office." And yeah, of course. And then I made a big mistake. I said, "You're always on stage." So now she's always thinking, "Oh my God, they see me. I'm on stage." So now she feels even worse. But it is like that. They are always on stage. You're always watched by someone, and especially she's also middle management. So they have pressure from below and from they're managed by her manager and from the people underneath her. So it's big mistake, but
you learn.
Yeah, exactly.
You learn. It's interesting, Christina, when you say about that. Should we go as far to say that this is a high-risk environment, mid-sized?
I don't want to say that based on my studies only.
But you said so.
Yeah, I said that. I think we should move towards trying to find healthier office types and less healthy, and then avoid the less healthy ones. But we have to, of course, need more research on this in this area, because I mean, it can be, even though it was a big database and we did all the statistical things right and everything, you need to do the same type of study over and over again to see, does this office type stand out all the time? It seems so, but we...
In Sweden we right now have a fundraised project named Brain Check. In Swedish it's hjärnkoll, because in Sweden we have a loss each year. I think it's about 15 billion Swedish krona or something on sick leave and mental illness that costs the companies 15 billion krona. And this is very interesting to see that at least we know that a quarter of the population will sometimes during their lifetime be affected themselves by mental illness, and 3/4 of the population will be indirectly affected with their own illness or knowing someone else who is getting a mental illness. So we have to think about this, and as you said in the beginning, Diane, we're comfortable in talking about workplace costs, but talking about the workforce performance and how we can also both make the employees healthier and feel more well-being, as well as helping the companies to gain more income in their businesses, is one thing that we should bear in mind. Happiness. None of you has talked about happiness. We have talked about the social interaction and meeting colleagues and feeling well. To feel happy during your workday or in your life in general, is that something that we could build in, helping with the environment?
The thing is, with happiness, it's not really tangible. Like, if I come to a client, and it's hard enough to talk about well-being with clients. If I start talking about happiness, then they're like, "We're having a real estate project here." So I think I do realize that if we talk about stress and well-being and identifying with the employer and all this turning into motivation, then I think it's a very important factor. But I think it's hard to place in the working environment that I work in, with the clients that are interacting with.
I would say, rather than focus on the word happiness, I would talk about employee engagement. All over the world we're seeing organizations that live and breathe their results from their annual employee engagement, which is the closest thing to happiness that sounds more business-like. Because it can quantify it, based on, do you feel like your organization has a direction? Do you feel like, you're making a contribution? The things that maybe could be part of happiness, but doesn't come right out and say, are you happy? Same thing when we look at things like workplace satisfaction surveys or something like that. You're not asking, are you happy with the workplace? More like, does it meet your needs?
Exactly.
Because that's a tough one. I think that's very tough if you try to quantify happiness or even define it.
Yeah, but I think also happiness and it's very much to do with the design and the outcome. For example, look at this office, the most attractive office in Sweden 2012. How come that was so? I think people that are actually in this building, you feel happy. Because the design and the look of the office is very important for the well-being of the person. And I believe also the happiness in the long run.
Interesting.
We're actually very close to the happiest country in Europe, which is Denmark.
Yeah, I know.
They're on the happy index. I think they're number one.
They are, yeah.
Maybe someone...
Well, then that's interesting to see. I would love to see what is it. What are the characteristics, or what is being rated when they ask that? Because maybe that is something we can interpret and then apply to the workplace.
Good idea.
Yeah, we are very happy in Denmark. However, I think the other thing with the design of this room, psychological studies have shown that if you say something in a basement, in a dark place, and people listen to that, then they will think that that was nothing special, really. But if you say the same thing in a beautiful place. People will think that, wow, this is fantastic, this is good. So of course that affects your happiness also. You can say that. I'm quite sure that it has an indirect happiness effect.
Yeah. No, but also the basic of like ergonomics. There we have like 3 layers in the pyramid. The basic is like lighting, fresh air and acoustics and all that. The second layer is, do I need to have this iPad? Do I need this chair? How do I use this chair? That's the next level. But the top level is, if I really like the design, the view of it. Is it cool? Is it something that
you're proud of? If you're proud of working here.
Then the 2 layers in the bottom doesn't really care. They can be in a really bad environment, or a bad message perhaps. Then in a good environment, that's.
And it's tricky to plan because this is subjective.
Yeah.
The other things are connected to some techniques, and you can steer it from management point of view. But how to steer happiness or
right.
Yeah.
It's not completely subjective, I think. Aesthetics is not completely subjective, actually, because I find when I've done studies on aesthetics and functional dimension, and it's always the same aspects that the employees bring up that they find aesthetics. Oh, this is what I like. I like a spacious room. I like windows. I like to be able to look out. I like colors. It's to blend this office. We need more identity. It came up always the same themes. So it's quite somehow generalized, and then it's, of course, you can give a different touch to it, but it seems to be the same thing that people are bringing up as being important.
Well, I'd like to compare it with architecture or city design. If you look at parts of the city where you have building types that influence a whole society because of the social behavior or because of the power they're submitting through the appearance they have, then you see that architecture or building design has this power to change a whole district of people into something that you never were able to plan. Like in the modern times, in the 20s, when they built up all these machines, the living machines, and then place them with the intention to create a nice environment in the green surrounding. It didn't work out because it had a dynamic for itself. The buildings are too general and they're not individualized enough. So the single person feels like an ice cube in a box. And I think if the same thing is with interior design or office design, you have the same tools in your hand to control with design what is the feeling about the space. The same with the cellar or rooftop terrace, where you announce the vision for the next few years. You would never do this in the basement.
Right. That's a good way to
interesting symbolic value from the place.
Okay, Ann-Sofie, we are talking about, as you said, Helen, I refer to you again. Oh, I come to my client and should I talk about happiness when I said this is a real estate project? My question is, thinking about this, we are supposed to create arenas for creativity, functionality and productivity because everyone, we are going to work because we will contribute to the companies and the organizations, and we want to deliver and we want to be respected for what we contribute with. But whom should be involved? Let's say we are the consultants helping our clients. Whom from the clients' organizations should be involved in this change project? And then I didn't say real estate project, I said change project. Because it's definitely, and I think that we can agree on, it's not only a real estate issue.
Right.
So whom should we allocate? Whom should contribute?
Well, we mentioned human resources, and I'm a big proponent of that. The unusual functionality that we've seen that I think makes a lot of sense. One organization was so concerned about data privacy because they had a more open environment. People would be taking their laptops and moving from here to here to here, sometimes dropping a flash drive, and who knows what data would be on that, protecting customer information, that they actually had the chief privacy officer sit on the core team. You may not have that extreme on a project, but having someone that's looking out after security of information is an area that I think people should think about, at least exposing the overall plan for the office to someone in that area so that they can weigh in on the risks.
I think you also should bring in a reference group of ordinary employees, actually, and not only the HR, because it should not only be from management point of view, it should also be the ordinary man on the floor, if you are interested in implementing it the full way.
I also had in one project a design advisory board, which makes total sense if it comes to identity of a building or an interior design, that there is a group of people that takes care of the look and feel of the company and the culture. So if they judge about your work and your design, then you can match that cultural habit or that look and feel and foster it on the other hand.
Yeah, I was these people work with every day that was put design.
Well, in this case it was Adidas, and they work with product development and they work with design, of course. And but it was a board with like 5 people that were put together.
We always like an interdisciplinary team of PR, communication, marketing, employer branding. Because then we have an external view on the company plus the internal view of the company, and that should be aligned to each other. So whatever you communicate outside, you should also communicate inside, and that should match. So if we talk about identification at the workplace, then you need this interdisciplinary team of communication and marketing to also bring in that spirit into the workplace. And communication as such is also a very important tool in change management.
Of course, information technology, because the IT has to support whatever the needs are going to be as they change because of the workplace.
And the question is this set up the way of seeing the core team? Is that one of the driving forces, or is it the change itself that's driving into setting up the teams in this way? We have, for the last few years in Sweden at least, we have been talking about, you said IT telecom, we have been talking about bring your own device, because many of us maybe have better technical equipment at home, and why couldn't we bring it to work and use those devices? One of the last discussions I saw the other week was not bring your own device, it was bring your own behavior. Okay, what do we mean with that? IT telecom / HR, and where are we standing then? We are talking about the younger generations and the newcomers. How do they affect, and what's actually, I don't know if it's international, in Sweden we say what is the hen and what is the egg, which came first. So
I think the driving forces then guide who should be on the team, because 3 years from now, 5 years from now, it could be very, very different. There could be issues that we don't even know are going to surface.
Bring your own behavior is something that I find very critical, because we talked about it earlier. Karim said that an office also needs to be a space where I can focus on my work, and home is different than a restaurant, than an airport, than an office. So I think when I go to a very fancy restaurant, I bring a very different behavior to that restaurant too than that I take on my couch in my living room. And I think it's appropriate also to bring a certain behavior to the office that doesn't match the one on the soccer field. or somewhere else. So, yes, I think. Of course, everybody has their own personality, and you shouldn't have like a mask when you're at the workplace. But bring your own behavior. I think I find that a very critical statement.
I think it's interesting. I think it's connected to the trend that we see more and more temporary workers. So buy fixed equipment for them, and they have their behavior, and then they leave. So let's make an environment where they can fit. A little bit like that, and I think it will continue. I think I saw a study that 75% of the companies actually accept people to bring their own devices today, and that might increase in the coming years to 90%.
But that's very tough, actually. There's a huge tension between individualism and standardization at that point in terms of technology, IT safety, IT security, behavior. I think companies are actually struggling with that. People bringing their own devices and bringing more and more of their personal life into the office. And at some point it is struggling in terms of security.
Yeah, we see the risk being the people in information technology are cringing when they hear that people want to bring their own devices. They know they're doing it already, and they talk about the risk that it's not worth it. They would rather invest and get everybody maybe the latest device. But then, of course, you can't satisfy everybody because people have different perceptions of what the latest and the best is.
Well, I think you can expect as a knowledge worker that your company that you work for provides you with the state-of-the-art technology, and that you're happy to use that also privately. So it's actually the other way around. And why should you buy an iPad? I think nobody buys an iPad for its private use. He gets it from his company and uses it privately also. And
that gets into changing the policies, because back in the good old days, you may have carried 2 cell phones around. You weren't allowed to use company equipment. It still happens, but now I think the reality is sinking in, saying, "Wait a minute, what are we doing here?" So the lines are blurring, I think.
There's big corporations that actually cut the line at 6 p.m. for the cell phones, so you can't use them.
They cut servers, so people actually have their work-life balance, and their definition of work-life balance is that they don't work past a certain hour in the evening or on the weekend. And what happens is those employees who really want to work, who say, but there are a few things I need to get done, and my system works a little differently. I like to work in the evening. They find ways to still do that.
Well, you write all your emails in the train, and then once the server gets back on air, it's just sending out 50 emails.
That's true.
Yeah. But with this expression, work-life balance, you differentiate work and private life, and
I don't.
No, I just meant this is what you can think about if you do it like this, balance in between that. But if you think 100 or 1,000 years ago on the farm, there was no big difference in between work and the private life. It was like very much melted together. So maybe this was the past, and there was something in between. In the future, this Office 2020 or 24/7, whatever, is more in this direction. So
melting again.
Melting again.
The pendulum is swinging.
Yes. So and why not bring your own device and behavior, and because this is shaping you, and there's this correlation between your environment, the objectives you got, like devices or whatever, and yourself and your behavior. So it must be connected.
I'm not saying you should divide it all the way, but
I just did.
I know.
I just took it.
But there is a trick there to find work life that doesn't wear you out, because we're so flexible today that we have a problem with people working too much, and it costs us sick leaves tremendously on the long term. So it's very much again back to organizations. How, of course, it's good that you have short deadlines and you have to deliver. Sometimes you have to work nights, but if you constantly have to do that. It's really, the organization have to rethink. I mean, the right thing might not be to shut down the server and everything, but it's sort of a very brutal way to stop it. But if you still don't change the deadlines, this might be even more stressful. Because you're like,
it's going to add stress.
Why, if you don't, I'm not able to work, but I'm still supposed to finish. The deadline is that date, and you're not giving me an extra week, so I think it's very tricky. It's very much how it's quite, the work demand is quite heavy today, actually.
And work-life balance is different for each of us. We are 8 people here, and we can have our own definitions, 8 own definition of what work-life balance is. But as Rainer said, if we are going to turn into farmers again, all of us, and work at the farm 24/7, how would that way of looking at it affect how we should design our workspaces in the future?
Like a farm.
I'm thinking there's been a lot of discussion lately about the younger generation, that their brains are physiologically different than the older generations because of all the new devices, new technology. So we are a different species compared to those people living at the farms 1,000 years ago. So maybe we can. I mean, we as humans we're very adaptable. So I don't think it's we don't have to go back to that kind of life. But then there are studies on original people, how much they work living in the jungle. And it turns out that they work maybe about 4 hours a day, and the rest of the time they play.
Sounds good.
And I don't think that it isn't an option for us. But I think, it's an interesting discussion.
Interesting. Which jungle? Can you point out the direction to the 4 hour?
Yeah, exactly.
4 hour jungle. We all work in the jungle, don't we?
But I think it all goes back to the leadership part. Like, how do I become, or how do I work more away from task-oriented to goal-oriented, but then at the same time realize if people work too much or not enough. I can't tell by the sight, and that's the vision of most leadership, why they're so afraid that they think, oh, once I see them working here and once I see them go home, they don't work too much, but they work the right amount of time. But I can sit here on Twitter or Facebook or YouTube and nobody will actually see what I do. So I think there's a lot we need to expect from the middle management in terms of the flexibility of work-life balance, and I need to trust my staff that they deliver on time, but that they also take their times off whenever they need it, during the day or at night. I don't care. But at some point, both management and staff need to be more conscious about that.
Right. And a lot ties back into human resources, and specifically in the policies. We're developing the actual policies for one of our clients with flexible work arrangements, and they had some thoughts and wanted us to look at them. And one of the bullet points was that you must be available for phone calls and emails during the normal business days. And I thought, you may want to say with the exception of normal healthy breaks, because the people that were on the pilot project for this organization were saying, well, I feel like I can't even take a half hour for lunch because my boss said I have to be available at the moment's notice. It's like, if you were in the office, would you have the culture in the organization where you're allowed to walk away from your desk for 30 or 45 minutes? Well, of course. It's like you're setting up a different culture for the people at home, and people have to be comfortable. If a colleague calls them with a question about business, say, I'm walking out the door. I'm going to lunch. I'll call you back in about a half hour or an hour. You have to take control and ownership of your time, regardless if it's at home or in an activity-based work setting where people don't necessarily know they're going to see you right in that spot for 8 hours a day.
You said an interesting thing in your keynote about rewarding or getting paid as an individual. And and I think most people work in groups or units or teams or departments, and if the responsibility for these departments is shared, like let's say this group has to fulfill the task or the goals within a certain amount of time, and there's a certain amount of women that work, or people that work part-time, and interns, and all sorts of different responsibilities that these people communicate and contribute to the goal that is a common goal for that unit. That would probably help a lot to get rid of the tension that each single person has, because it is responsible to some management that is not directly involved in that group.
Well, we want employees to be more accountable. We want people to take action, not to sit and wait for the next instruction on what to do. So many behaviors need to change. I mean, and a lot has to do with the culture. You know, is it okay to act in a certain way, or we've always done it this way? Cultures need to change. It's elusive, but we're finding so many clients that are saying they want to change the workplace because they know they need to change the culture. So the workplace is seen as a guiding force. So what are the factors changing the workplace? Well, what is the workplace changing? I mean, it's just the physical space is so powerful. The power of place. It's amazing what we expect the workplace to do. And go back to the comment, we're putting so much burden on the workplace design, better be perfect, and it better magically change everybody's behavior. And that's a lot to expect.
Wasn't it Churchill who said, first we shape the buildings and then the buildings shape us?
Yes.
Christina?
Think about this with how to actually have people to collaborate and support it. You have to sort of give the benefit of the team and not of the individual. It's I worked with an international Swedish big firm that have had this problem when actually in this firm they really work in teams, but when they came to United States they had the problem that the salaries were so much based on individual level that the people that came from Sweden and used to this teamwork and was paid by team effort, all of a sudden they saw, oh wow, that's not beneficial for me, because that's not how you are paid in the United States. You're paid by individual base and not on how much you contribute in the team. And so you have to somehow find team benefits and then distribute, I think, on the individual. And I remember I was working on a lean office design where they had implemented lean in team-based work, but still they knew exactly how much effort each individual had to do within the team. But they had the problem that when people were sick or were absent, they didn't want to give away their project because they were half finished, and then someone would finish them and end up getting the credit for it. So and that was not beneficial at all for the team. So we talked a lot of how can we actually change that in this office. If you are supposed to, the whole team, it should not be a problem if you have to leave, give your projects to someone, and it should not affect you as an individual if this happens. So I think you have to find benefits at the team level and stop measuring individuals too much. Although each individual, of course, is important, and everyone will know in the team who's contributing and who's not contributing. So the social control is certainly going to work there. So you don't have to worry about it, I think.
I agree with you, but I'm also thinking there are such great cultural differences in the world between countries and industries, and so I don't think there won't be one solution for everyone. And I'm also thinking, for example, in the US, sometimes there are companies that are using 10,000 people doing a thing that's done by 3 people maybe in Scandinavia. You have to have completely different work environment for those two kind of way of working.
At the same time,
Now, but coming back a little bit to that power balance, who's in charge of the work environment? Of course, all architects or workplace strategies, but also the group of people from the company who will implement and inform about the journey of how they actually made their working environment, and finding the right unofficial leaders, so to say, because there are always to find that's like one of the key things as well. That I would say to okay, I know that this guy has been a part of this working group. Okay, but then I'm relaxed. Then I will be more happy to get information and acknowledge the project that has been carried out. And I once had a group. It was a municipality, the board of that. They were the group who will implement it down to their employees. That was not a good meeting, because no one in that, maybe it was 1 out of 9 who actually wanted to do the shift over. So it was like the head of the municipality said, we will do this to attract different type of generations and so on. But this board group, they were like, this will not be good. And then they were quite long in the project already, so I was like, okay, I'll leave you there. I've done my part. But it's really important to have the right persons in that group who will implement and inform the end users in the end. Positive attitude towards the project.
Could it be so? In Europe we have the long tradition of producing those open plan offices. From the States we have the cubicles and so on. We have had patented solutions that this is what the office, the workplace should look like. Could it be that we are now going to invent a new prototype, a one-size-fits-all office, and this is what the office world will look like in the future?
I don't think so. It's as I said in the beginning, it needs a new identity, and the identity is individualized to each corporation, to each company, because each company has its own culture, and of course it's about the people. That's like the masses around it, but it is a culture that you want to implement, and that you want your employees to live off and be proud of and be part of. So they need to be different.
However, would there be some sort of list of must-haves for the office? Every office must have places for concentration and must have areas for collaboration. They're going to look totally different, and the number of those spaces could vary. But like the ingredients for a successful, every office must have a healthy focus, and.
But that's that's like an apartment. In an apartment, like you had. Let's say you had a kitchen, you had a dining room, and you had a living room, and you had bedrooms, and then of course there's a loft philosophy where there's an open space for everything, but still you have places or spaces where you can go to sleep or you cook, and so this is actually a program of rooms that you need to fulfill, and of course that's for every company or every office, basically the same. But it differs how you use it.
The tricky part is the different type of persons also. Everybody expects to be extroverts, but quite many is also introverts, and that is one size fits all. Perhaps the challenge we're having there, to have a work environment suitable for both type of persons or personalities.
Could you say that, Frans? Because we had one tweet stating, shouldn't the activity taking place in the type of office be taken into account before stating that one type is healthier than another? So we can also squeeze that into that conclusion.
Yes.
that actually goes with what I wanted to say, that I think we have like a modular system of how offices work. We know we need quiet and concentration, and we need communication and collaboration. And I think once you've done a couple of workplace projects, you know that there are certain spaces that work well and which don't. But I think what really is important is the process behind it, that you don't come with your modular system and say, here you go, let's collect what you want, but rather go into the organization, have an analysis, understand in depth how the organization works in terms of activities, in terms of people, in terms of culture, in terms of leadership, and then decide which modules you're going to use. And I think in the end, I think there is a certain standard in terms of rooms and functionality, but what makes it unique is the process behind it to analyze why you need it in a certain way, and then the design and the identity that you give it.
Plus the building that it's located in. There's so many different building types and architectural typologies that also influence the interior and of the office and the appearance. So.
I agree, totally agree. But I'm just thinking that I think it's very important that also you built in some kind of flexibility according to what kind of industry you are in. And if it's change, it's very fast. Then of course you should be able to change a lot after 2 years, and you shouldn't be. You've done this grand plan, and then you're stuck with that for the next 10 years. I think that.
But I think that should be part of the outcome of the research in the beginning. If you have an in-depth organizational analysis, part of it will be to see, okay, you are an organization who changes quite often. Let's take that into account when we design your office. But I think that should be part of the research and analysis phase in the beginning.
I believe office buildings have to be both generalized and flexible in a way. Generalized the way, like our old industries we see now, textile industries and so on, that are like the perfect offices because they're high ceilings, easy to convert. And during the 70s in Sweden, during the energy crisis, oil crisis, we had these really low ceilings because that was a method to decrease the consumption of oil. And now no one wants to rent those buildings. Everyone wants the high ceilings buildings, and they are so generalized. And as long as you have the staircases placed at certain positions and have the toilets or the expensive placed at certain, then the inner walls should of course be flexible, but the general structure has to be so generalized that it suits so many different options. It costs more, high ceiling, but it's going to be in long term much more flexible building because you can put anything in there. It might even be 2 stories office buildings with an entresol or whatever. So I think generalization is pretty much the key to flexible office.
That was very well said, Christina, and it's time for us to wrap this roundtable session up. So I hope that you all feel that you have been able to contribute with everything you have prepared, and that I'm very pleased myself with the discussion and the talks, and it's been very, very interesting to be with you here, hosted by Saint-Gobain Ecophone at Ideas in Malmö, Sweden. I actually have found those 5. What do you think?
Wow. Let's hear.
Do we need to share them?
Let's
get the results.
So the results from the jury here in Malmö. Actually, the first one, management and culture, of course, how the leadership is shaped and how the managers act in the companies, if they dare to set the agenda and then dare to fulfill and really try to achieve what we will with the organization and the development. So my top number 1, or our number 1, is the management / the culture of the company. The second one, of course, maybe it's the first one, it's the empowered employees and the workforce influence in the change management and in the change projects. Number 3 was the thing that you ended the discussion with, Sina. It's flexibility, and flexibility to be seen as both the flexibility in how we actually do the physical layouts or the construction of the buildings, but definitely also the flexibility of handling the world, the economical situation, and what's impacting on the companies and the organizations. We're talking about economical results and productivity, but how to meet that with a flexible setup. Technology, of course, all of us working with the physical environments. I always talk about the 4 flows that are needed to shape the premises, to shape the offices, where the physical environment is one, the digital environment is the second, and then we have behavior, and then we have services to support everything. We working with the physical environments always said that we can't be more mobile, we can't be more flexible, because we have those devices and we have electricity in the walls and so on. But a few years ago, the digital platform just passed us by in like a Lamborghini, and we couldn't keep up the pace with it. So on the 4th place, the technology. On the 5th place, I would have loved to put sustainability, but because sustainability is, as we talked about, and as I said, both the economical, the social, and the environmental sustainability. But that is a factor that we can't hide from it, and we can't put our head in the sand and not see it. So sustainability, we get it anyhow, even though we can't avoid it. So we put that within brackets, and we add identity, as you said, Karim, also in one of your last sentences, the identity and the profile that will have a great impact on how our workplaces will be shaped in the future. Could you agree on my summary?
Absolutely.
Absolutely, yeah,
Yes.
definitely. Yeah.
Okay, and I think that we can have those 5 put down in writing somewhere, and we can communicate them.
Yes.
I'm so proud to have had spent those 2 hours together with you, and I can promise, can't I, Frans, on Saint-Gobain Ecofons, that we'll be back.
Definitely.
To be continued.
Yes.
Yeah, why not?
Yes. Good idea.
So, thank you to all of you. Thank you to the few in the room and all our technical support that's made this roundtable discussion possible. And thanks to you out there in the cyberspace looking at us and listening to our conclusions and our discussions. We'll be back, thank you, and we will take you to the workplace in the future of 2020. Take care.